Hi guys, good evening all of you. Welcome to Cynthia IS. Cynthia IS is the leading academy in India under the guidance of SP Sitare Hind. It's the launchpad to my present life. It's our humanity and potential, all the that make us beautiful. It's my personal urge to all of you dig deep to identify your potential and meaningful connection with Cynthia IS. Today I am going to take lecture ethical framework. What is ethical framework? Ethical framework. What is ethical framework? Ethical framework is a system of an ethical framework. An ethical framework. An ethical framework is the system of an ethical framework is the system of an ethical framework is the system of ethical principle. Ethical principle. Ethical principle, belief, beliefs, values that guide us that guide us decision making and behavior. Decision making and behavior. Point 2. Point 2. It is a set of guidelines to help. It is the set of guideline to help. It is the set of guideline to help individual organization, individual organization, individual organization, society, society. What is right and wrong? What is right or wrong? What is right and what is right and wrong? How to act morally responsible manner. How to act morally. How to act morally responsible manner. Responsible manner. Next, it is based on the value of and belief. Point third, it is based on the value and belief. It is based on the value and belief. It is based on the value and belief. particular group of a particular group particular group or culture particular group or culture provide basis for ethical decision provide a basis for provide a basis for provide a basis for ethical decision making ethical decision making ethical decision making. Next, ethical framework ethical framework. Point 1, ethics and politics. Ethics and politics. Ethics and politics. Point 2, ethics in public life. Ethics in public life. Point 3, ethical framework for minister. Ethical framework for minister. Point 4, code of ethics for civil servant. Code of ethics for civil servant. Code of ethics for civil servant. Next, ethics and politics. Ethics and politics. Under it we will discuss some point. Point 1. Point 1. Higher standard of ethical conduct were. Higher standard of ethical conduct. Higher standard of ethical conduct were integrate part of the freedom struggle. Freedom struggle. Freedom struggle. However, following vices started. However, following vices started. Following vices started. However, following vices started. afflicting the political process, afflicting the political process, political process, afflicting the political process in the country, in the country, in the country after transfer of power, after transfer of power, transfer of power. Next, excess in election, excess in election, excess in election. Point 1, excess in election. Point 1, in campaign funding, in campaign funding. Point 2, in campaign funding. Point 2, use of illegitimate money, use of make money, use of illegitimate money. Quantum of expenditure. Point 3, quantum of expenditure. Quantum of expenditure. Next point, imperfect electoral rolls, imperfect electoral roll, imperfect electoral roll. Next point, impersonation, impersonation. Next point, booth capturing, booth capturing. Booth capturing. Next point, violence, violence. Point 8, violence, inducement and intimidation, inducement, inducement and inducement and intimidation. And intimidation. Inducement and intimidation. Next point, floor crossing after the election, floor crossing after the election, after the election, floor crossing after the election, abuse of power in public office, abuse of power in public office. Abuse of power in public office. Next point, criminalization of politics. Criminalization of politics. Point 1, participation of criminal in the electoral process. Participation of criminals in the electoral process. Electoral process. Participation of criminal in the electoral process. Next, point 1, reason for criminal joining politics. Reason for criminals join politics. Reason for criminals join politics. Point next. Opportunity to influence crime investigation. Opportunity to influence crime investigation. Crime investigation. Investigation. Next point, opportunity to convert opportunity to convert the policeman from 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 being potential being potential adversaries. Next point, reason for political parties to admit reason for political parties to admit criminal. Reason for political parties reason for political parties reason for political parties to admit criminals. Point 1, Criminals have the ability to secure vote. Criminals have the ability criminals have the ability to secure vote votes for political parties for political parties through their money through their money and muscle power Point 2. Recent temperament. Recent improvement. Under it we will discuss improvement in the accuracy of electoral rolls. Improvement in the accuracy of electoral rolls. Accuracy of electoral rolls. Point 1. Under it we will discuss computerization of electoral rolls. Computerization of electoral rolls. Point 2. Voter registration has been voter registrations has been made more accessible to voters. Accessible to voters. Next point. Provision of photo identity. Provision of photo identity. Provision of photo identity cards for all voters. Cards for all voters. All voters. Next point. Disclaim of next point. Disclosure of antecedents of candidate. antecedent of candidate. Disclosure of incidents of candidates. Conviction by a court. Point 1. Conviction by a court conviction by a court or pending of criminal case or pending of criminal case pending of criminal case pending of criminal case. Point 2. Assets and liabilities. Assets and liabilities. Assets and liabilities of candidate of candidates and family members and family members family members. Next point. Disqualification of power. Disqualification of power. Disqualification of power. Disqualification of power. Disqualification of person. Disqualification of person convicted. Disqualification of persons convicted of criminal offense. Of criminal offense. Criminal offense. Next point. Enforcement of code of conduct. Enforcement of code of conduct. Of code of conduct. Enforcement of code of conduct during election. During election. During election. Next point. Ensuring free and fearless polling. Ensuring free and fearless polling. Fearless polling. Free and fearless polling. Next point. Policing arrangement. Processing arrangement have been improved have been improved improvement have been improved. Next point, electronic voting machine electronic voting machine throughout the country throughout the country throughout the country. Next point, death of death of an independent candidate independent candidates would not lead would not lead would not lead to the cancellation of election cancellation of cancellation of election. Next point, restriction of size of council restriction of size of councils size of council size of council of minister council of ministers to 15% to 15% of the total strength of the total strength 15% of the total strength of lower house. Next point, issue and political reforms. Political reforms. Issues and political reforms. Reform of political funding. Point 1. Reform of political funding. Political funding. Reform of political funding. Recommendation. Point 1. Recommendation. A system of political state. A system for. A system for partial state funding. Partial state funding. Partial state funding. Partial state funding should be introduced. Should be introduced. Should be introduced in order to reduce. In order to reduce in order to reduce in order to reduce the scope of legitimate scope of illegitimate and unnecessary funding. Unnecessary funding. Unnecessary funding of expenditure of election. Of expenditure of election. Of election. Tightening of anti-defection law. Next point. Tightening of anti-defection law. Anti-defection law. Tightening of anti-defection law. Next point. The issues of disqualification of member. The issues of disqualification. The issues of disqualification of members on ground of defection should be decided by the president comma governor on the advice of the election commission. election commission. Election commission. Next, thanks all of you.